If you have gates at the Justice Department that not only eliminates their offensive capability against the president, but it means that the Justice Department can be deployed to get at the real enemies of our country, namely the people who get us into these wars, who are looting the population through the Federal Reserve System, and so on. That's an extremely important position. Now, on Tulsi Gabbard, Hillary Clinton called her a Russian agent, and what did the Clinton campaign do? They constructed the fraud known as Russiagate, and it was Clinton personally, along with her law firm Perkins Coie, that were involved in that. But again, who did they go to? Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and the whole intelligence community. If Gabbard is confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, all those agencies, 18 agencies, will report to her. Guys, that was the much-beloved Harley Schlanger, a longtime friend of Truth, Humanity, and Sergeant Report. And let me just say how honored and humbled I am to be a part of this movement to take our great nation back again. Now the question is this: are we going to have an American Renaissance 2.0 or a nuclear holocaust? The situation is dire, but I predict this: we, the people, and humanity for the win, friends, are gonna break it all down for you today. The enemies of humanity have precious few cards left to play, and we, the people, have God on our side. Therefore, no weapons formed against us shall prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. This is Sean from Sergeant Report. Friends, quote, "The US election was a stunning revolt against the establishment, but they still don't get it." In this conversation with my good friend Harley Schlanger, we are going to be talking about the real potential for World War III if cooler minds don't prevail, why the intelligence establishment fears Tulsi Gabbard, and why the DC swamp is in a panic over Matt Gaetz. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking our nation back. This is the Great Awakening. It is an American Renaissance 2.0 if we can stop these people from bringing us into World War III with Russia. Harley Schlanger, welcome back, sir. Thank you, Sean. Good to be with you, and glad we're still all here. Yeah, we're all still here. We're alive and kicking. The enemies of humanity are cornered now, and evidently they're eager to maybe start a World War III with Russia. It's absolute insanity. By the way, Russian forces are now preparing to launch the RS-26 Intercontinental Ballistic missile with a range of 6,000 kilometers in a possible attack or retaliation against Kiev. I have more to say here. You want to talk about draining the swamp? These are the types of people we need to get rid of and vanquish permanently from the shadow state. I'm talking about people hiding in plain sight, like Defense Secretary Austin, who dismisses Russia's very real warning that Putin reserves the right to retaliate using nuclear weapons. Listen to this. We've known for several weeks that they were revamping their policy on the use of nuclear weapons. As I look at what they're doing, and as we watch their strategic forces very carefully, I don't see a change in their strategic force posture. I will continue to remain vigilant in this regard, but at this point, no. I don't see an indication that there's an imminent intent to use nuclear weapons. You talk about playing Russian roulette with nuclear weapons and the end of the world. This is it. I mean, there was a 1 in 6 chance. That's Russian roulette. A .357 revolver, 6 chambers, 6 bullets. You spin it, put it to your head, and pull the trigger. If this were a normal game of Russian roulette, there's a 1 in 6 chance you're going to blow your head off. Would you play it? I've got news for you. It's 3 out of 6 chambers. In my view, it's a 50-50 chance of total nuclear war at this point. If the trajectory continues, it's a certainty. All right, guys, let's begin the show with Harley Schlanger. We're living in very dire times, Harley, and you know what? A great awakening for humanity is right around the corner. We just need to get to January 20th. Why? I think that's the reason Biden changed his mind, assuming he has a mind, and decided to give the right to use long-range missiles to target Russia. Maybe many of your viewers already know this, but this is not a question of giving Ukraine the option of hitting Russia. These missiles will be guided, targeted, and launched by Americans and NATO personnel, with Ukraine as the cover. And what this means is the new strategic nuclear doctrine that Putin has just announced. He signed it yesterday, but he first announced it back in September. This doctrine states that Russia will consider any attack, which is a threat to the sovereign survival of the Russian nation, as justification for attacking both the non-nuclear and the nuclear power behind it. In other words, both Ukraine and the United States. Now, people like Lloyd Austin who try to dismiss this need to be remembered. Lloyd Austin is from Raytheon. He's part of the military-industrial complex. He and others are pushing this war for a specific reason. They couldn't defeat Trump at the ballot box. The American people rebelled against the Biden, Harris, Lincoln, Sullivan team in an extremely powerful and extraordinary way. And the Russians saw this. They realized this is a potential shift in the strategic situation because they can talk to Trump. Biden, on the other hand, wouldn't even talk to them. None of the diplomats, if there are any diplomats in the US, will talk to the Russians. So, what Biden did, or what the Biden team did by making this decision, is create a situation where they think they're going to lock the situation of an endless war into place so that Trump can't get out of it. At the same time, they are going to use every effort and every bit of ammunition they have to sink the appointees that Donald Trump has made to his cabinet. Now, before we go any further, I just saw across the screen a few minutes ago a statement from General Michael Flynn, which I think is extremely important. He called for the invocation of the 25th Amendment to remove Biden right away. I know, Sean, you and I talked about this. I think it was a couple of months ago. That if the Democrats were so convinced that Biden couldn't stand for re-election, and certainly couldn't serve for another 4 years due to mental incapacities, why are they leaving him in the Oval Office at this point? And who's making these decisions? So I would certainly endorse General Flynn's comment. The problem is, you called on Harris, the vice president, to invoke the 25th Amendment. But perhaps there are still some people in Washington who are not yet insane, who would take this seriously as a way to move us out of the imminent danger that Biden has put us into. Can I point out one issue with that plan, though? And it's this. It's not Biden who's in control, and I know you know that. It is the secondary headquarters in Washington, D.C. for Barry Soetoro, Barack Hussein Obama. This is from Tom Seguro over on Twitter. Biden allows Ukraine to strike Russia with long-range U.S. missiles. Well, here's the problem. Joe Biden wasn't part of any decision. Segura, a CIA, NSA whistleblower, says Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice, Samantha Power, and Victoria Nuland, I bet you thought she was retired, as well as Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, General Charles Q. Brown Jr., U.S. Air Force, and also present RC suite executives from BlackRock and Blackstone, etc., make up the military deep state now. Let me point this out. You want to talk about the head of the snake, the top of the pyramid, the Committee of 12. How about this? Lockheed Martin and BlackRock were definitely the alphas in the room. Two unidentified men, calling in from Switzerland, were keeping the meeting on task. So, getting rid of Biden and putting in Kamala as president isn't going to change a damn thing, is it, Harley? Well, I think this is why we have to go with the full program of President Trump. His statement, I'm not sure if it just resurfaced in the last couple of days or if it's from before, but what he said is that we have to remove and dismantle the entire globalist neocon establishment, which is perpetually dragging us into endless war, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy. Yes, sir. So, that's what the target is. It's not that poor, doddering figure Biden. It's what the Russians call collective Biden. And, as you know, I just wrote about the role of Blinken in coordinating this career operative of this permanent bureaucracy. But that's what the president-elect has targeted with his appointments. That's why they're so panicked about Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr., because this time he's very serious about cleaning out the globalist neocons, and that's the question of life or death for our nation. I hope your viewers take that seriously, because the president is going to need the support of all Americans as he moves to carry this out. It's going to have incredible blowback, because those people control the media, they control institutions, and think tanks. They're going to do everything possible to defeat him, including using huge bribes, blackmail, and so on. But if truth and right can win, if we get behind it, then that's what has to be done. Clean out that whole network that the Segura report identified. Yeah, 100%. Let me just share this though. Yes, they control the mainstream media horror show, but that media industrial complex now has less than a 12% approval rate from American citizens. And beyond that, let me tell you something, they are bleeding money. They're hemorrhaging money. I just read today that Comcast is trying to divest from CNBC and MSNBC because the ratings are so deplorably low. They can't afford it. They're bleeding money. The mainstream media is bleeding money because we are the news now. And by the way, guys, you think we don't come prepped? Harley just mentioned this. Here's the thing. Harley just quoted this man. This man, who some of you still say is just a different wing of the same bird of prey, right? That he's in on the whole thing to bring down America? Are you kidding me? Here's what he said not very long ago. This is the central issue. We need peace without delay. In addition, there must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad while turning us into a third world country and dictatorship right here at home. All right, I'll pause it there. What's he talking about? This neocon establishment, Bill Kristol's project for a new American century, which called for a catalyzing and cataclysmic event leading up to 9/11. That's what they got, didn't they? They used it to rally the American people into going into wars, world wars across the globe. Wars we would not otherwise agree to be a part of. We're talking about Bush Sr., the former head of the CIA. His entire family has endorsed Kamala Harris. They lost, didn't they? How about Dick Cheney? No big contracts in Iraq. He lost, didn't he? And how about his offspring, Liz Cheney? Oh, she's probably got trials coming for her because she's a traitor, and she railroaded so many great Americans, January 6th protesters, into gulags, where many of them still sit, awaiting trials. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an absolute sea change. I'm coming back to Harley to ask a very important question based on an email he sent me. The Gabbard Gates flank is key to breaking the deep state. What did you mean by that? Flesh it out for us, Harley. Very simple. Why is Donald Trump putting Matt Gaetz in charge of the Department of Justice or the Department of Injustice? This is a major part of the permanent bureaucracy that's been weaponized against any person who stands up against the globalists and their corporate cartels. And Gaetz, back in 2016, when Russiagate was launched, was one of the most aggressive fighters for the truth to expose the fraud of Russiagate. He knows from his work who was involved, including the old Obama intelligence community around John Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Obama himself, Susan Rice, and Samantha Power. But also the international side of it, MI6 and Sir Richard Dearlove. By the way, why is the former head of MI6 spouting off against Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard? What vote does he have in that? Well, he was the one who laundered the fake Iraq weapons of mass destruction, so-called intelligence, into the hands of Cheney, Bush, and Colin Powell. Well, let me just tell you this, Harley. One thing that's interesting, and that I've been saying about Matt Gaetz repeatedly, is that he's a modern-day Perry Mason. This guy is literally Matlock. I'm not even kidding. He's got an encyclopedic index of these people's crimes. He knows the receipts, he knows where the bodies are buried, and he knows how to connect the dots. Maybe later in the show, I'll play a clip. The man is absolutely stunning, and that's why they fear him, because he's going to come after those who committed these crimes. And when I say he knows where the bodies are buried, I mean that both figuratively and literally. He's a very tough guy, and they're throwing all sorts of things at him. He knows that he is speaking on behalf of truth. And so, if you have Gaetz at the Justice Department, that not only eliminates their offensive capability against the president, but it also means that the Justice Department can be deployed to get at the real enemies of our country, namely, the people who get us into these wars, who are looting the population through the Federal Reserve System, and so on. That's an extremely important position. Now, on Tulsi Gabbard. Don't forget she was in the Democratic National Committee. I think she was a vice chair during the 2016 campaign. She exposed Hillary Clinton's fraud against Bernie Sanders, and she left the party, or the DNC, at that point. Hillary Clinton called her a Russian agent, and what did the Clinton campaign do? They constructed the fraud known as Russiagate, and it was Clinton personally, along with her law firm Perkins Coie, that were involved in that. But again, who did they go to? Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and the whole intelligence community. If Gabbard is confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, all those agencies, 18 agencies, will report to her. Not only does that mean she can stop corruption and fraud in the future and stand in the way of regime changes, coups, false flags, and wars, but it also means she will have access to all the evidence of their involvement since 2001 in wars, assassinations, illegal activities, FISA court fraud, and so on. So, the two of them represent the front end of the potential to knock out this deep state, which thinks they have the right to control the United States and the world. That's why there's such a panic. That's why the Democrats are running around screaming. That's why the New York Times and the Washington Post are running their stories. But as you say, the people are against them, against the deep state. And if the president or president-elect continues to mobilize the population as he has been, as a fighter, then we have the opportunity to achieve the complete overhaul that he's talking about. And that's something absolutely necessary, because the United States, under the current crew, is leading the world into a nuclear war. Even if we don't end up in a nuclear war, we risk total isolation from the rest of the world. We are the rogue state, and everyone else outside the United States knows that. Trump is going to bridge that gap. And let me tell you something miraculous that's happened. Because we won the popular vote, people have now been given permission to be red-blooded and to show up in droves. Even today, they're still counting votes in Pennsylvania, trying to steal the election and flip that Senate seat. They're doing the same thing in counties in California, Nevada, and Arizona. They're still counting votes, Harley. But here's the good news. I found a clip from Matt Gaetz. Let me play this for you because the American people are a little bit sick and tired of the Three Stooges nonsense. Or remember Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing. I hear nothing. I know. Oh, nothing. Well, guess what? Those days are over. Because, well, Matt Gaetz, check this out. So, where is it? The laptop? Sir, I'm not here to talk about the laptop. I'm here to talk about the FBI cyber program. You are the Assistant Director of FBI Cyber. I want to know where Hunter Biden's laptop is. Where is it, sir? I don't know that answer. That is astonishing to me. Now you're telling me, right here, that as the Assistant Director of FBI Cyber, you don't know where this is after it was turned over to you 3 years ago? Yes, sir, that's an accurate statement. I tell you what, Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record of this committee the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, which I'm in possession of. All right, I don't know if you guys could hear that in the audio, but I could hear very clearly through my headphones, gasps and exhales of shock from the audience listening. Ladies and gentlemen, he knows where the bodies are buried. He has the receipts. This whole nonsense of, I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing from the CIA, the FBI, and the DOJ, those days are over. It's a new dawn for America, Harley. That's the way I see it. Well, I think the cleanup has to go all the way to the top. That list you went through a couple of minutes ago, BlackRock, you can put JP Morgan Chase in there. You can add all the City of London banks, and some of the banks that operate out of Brussels. There's an international corporate cartel that was behind the so-called Great Reset. It's been behind every single one of these frauds and hoaxes where we as nations have lost sovereignty, and where we as people have lost our power to legislate and have an effect through the House of Representatives, our elected body. We've lost it. It's been taken away. But did Biden consult with Congress before he freed up the missiles to be used by Ukraine? The power to go to war is vested in Congress, not in the president. And this is where we've lost it. So if you have a stickler and an aggressive, tenacious fighter like Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, we'll see the fur flying immediately. And this is exactly what's needed. You know, Sean, going back to 2001, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of what happened there. And as you pointed out earlier, the 2001 operation was known in advance. Lyndon LaRouche forecasted in January 2001 that they would use a Reichstag fire to initiate emergency decrees. And what did we get out of that? Surveillance, the FISA court, and top-down censorship. So, we've been on a downward course, and it's been going on even before that, but especially since 2001, with one war after another. And now, people like Lloyd Austin and Senator Lindsey Graham are saying, well, now the wars are good because we don't have to have American lives lost. We can pay other countries to do the killing. Well, it's not going to last long, as we see with the Russian response to this escalation against them. I think Putin is going to do whatever he can to protect Russia over the next 2 months. And I think he's very much awaiting the arrival of Donald Trump in the White House. Trump has a lot to do with protecting the American people in this period, through his statements and through his mobilization. So it's going to be a very, very rocky 2 months. But assuming we get through it, I think you're right. We're going to see a dramatic change in the United States and in the US position in the world. Yeah, well, look, here's the thing. 100%. The people doing this, the names we cited, Nuland, Rice, Blinken, the whole group, all of them, are doing this because they're desperate. This is a complete act of desperation. And by the way, it just appeared the other day in Zero Hedge that Zelensky himself is saying, this war ends quickly, more quickly, under Donald J. Trump. Putin knows it, you know it, I know it, and everyone who's paying attention knows it. So you're right, pray that we get to January 20th because it's a new dawn for humanity. But the problem is, we still have enemies amongst us. Imagine this. You win the most important election in American history, only to be sold out by senators who can't show up to do their job on game day. Breaking, Chuck Schumer just confirmed another lifelong federal judge with a vote of 50-48 because Republican Senators Ted Cruz and Mike Braun didn't show up to block the confirmation by making it 50-50, and Kamala Harris is currently in Hawaii, so she couldn't cast the tie-breaking vote. Traitors at every turn. And we, the people, are sick and tired of it. By the way, Scott Pressler is right now boots on the ground in Pennsylvania, reading the Riot Act to the election board in that county. They said they're going to keep counting illegal votes, in violation of a direct order from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And the place is packed to the gills with MAGA supporters. We, the people, have woken up, and we're not going to take this kind of behavior anymore. And guess what? Any of these rhino traitors, any of them, Harley, they're going to be primaried in 2 years. And I don't think we should have to wait 2 years. It pains me to even say that, but they are going to be primaried out of their jobs forever. In 2 years, the American people are fed up, and we're wide awake. One advantage we have is this. Our opponents are arrogant. They really believe this line, that the MAGA supporters are a basket of deplorables, or, as Biden said, garbage. And they think they can wait this out, using the media they control and the politicians they own to get through this period, and restore the unipolar order that they so love and benefit from. But what they're missing is this. They still don't get it. Even with the article you cited, the headline you mentioned, they don't understand the magnitude of this shocking event. You can just see the pained expressions on the faces of the commentators and the politicians as they try to explain how the vote went. And what do they miss, Sean? Here's the most obvious thing. When they attack Trump as a misogynist, an authoritarian, a fascist, or a new Hitler, what they're missing is that people supported him, not for those reasons, but because he addressed their concerns. When the Democrats said, well, there's no inflation coming down. There are people who can't meet ends with their existing salaries. They can't make ends meet. The credit card debt of the nation has gone from $800 billion to $1.14 trillion during the Biden period. At the same time, interest rates on credit cards have gone from 16% to 23%. You don't think that's hurting people? So people who are voting because they're suffering, for their future, for their children, don't have money for food, medicine, or education. That doesn't make them Nazis and racists. They reacted based on their interests. And what they saw in Trump was an authentic figure who would stand up and fight for them. On the other side, Kamala Harris couldn't put a sentence together without repeating the same words over and over. That's right. So this is a revolution, and it's a revolution where we don't know where it's going to go yet, because the other side still has a lot of cards to play. But we have what I would say is the Trump card, and we've got to play that. But we have what I would say is the Trump card, and we've got to play that. Yeah, and we are. And by the way, I keep saying this. We have been given a reprieve by God because this man's head was not blown off on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was the day after, or maybe the same day, that RFK Jr. picked up the phone and called Donald J. Trump because he knew the man was legitimate at that point. He may have had questions previously. Then they had a face-to-face meeting, and RFK's life changed. He crossed the aisle, and he wants to make America great again. He believes Donald J. Trump wants to do that too, and we all know that they both want to make America healthy again. And by the way, we've been given an absolute reprieve from that anti-human timeline, where that Marxist queen of word salad would be sitting in the Oval Office and we'd be told she's the president. Can you believe it? Thank God in heaven, we are now in a pro-human timeline. Harley and Sean, one other point. The attempt to kill Trump came right after the weekend in which the NATO meeting in Washington, D.C. made the decision to escalate the war against Russia and Ukraine. So these things are interconnected. There's a continuity and coherence to what's happening in the world, a reality that most people are deprived of because of the lies in the media and the corruption of the political class. But when you actually put it together, and one of the things I'm doing right now is, I'm compiling a chronology of what Tulsi Gabbard did between 2012 and 2020, where she was consistently moving against corruption. And this is just one other point I want to make, the question of Syria. People sometimes have problems with Assad. They don't like him. But what did Tulsi Gabbard do? She went and talked to him, the same way that Trump went and talked to Kim Jong-un. And what happened in that discussion is that she was presenting evidence that the lie of chemical weapons being used by Assad was coming from British intelligence, from something called the White Helmets, and from Bellingcat. Now, this is another example of knowing where the corruption and the killing come from. And she held firm on that because she knew she was right. Now, why is this so important? From her own investigation, she confirmed what General Michael Flynn was saying, that the CIA was arming and training the Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists in Syria. US tax money was going into the hands of terrorists, just as our tax dollars are going into the hands of the neo-Nazi Azov battalions in Ukraine. Now, some people know that. But if you have real hearings, confirmation hearings, and they get in with the ability to tell people what they've discovered, then everyone will see exactly why the United States has gone downhill. Under those circumstances, we can not only clean out the permanent bureaucracy in the federal government, but also take away the power of private banks, financial institutions, BlackRock, and others. These are the entities that take for granted they can loot us and then attack us as deplorables when we protest. Yes, they have no legitimate cards left to play. I have 3 more clips to play in this broadcast with my friend Harley Schlanger, and all 3 are extremely inspirational. You know I mentioned Scott Pressler. Let me show you something very important. See this room? It's packed. I think this is Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where Commissioner Diane Marseglia openly and publicly said that they are going to violate the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court's order to stop counting illegal ballots because they want to rig the election and flip the seat. And the place is loaded, packed to the gills, with mega supporters. Scott Pressler dedicated his life after the stolen election in 2020. He moved to Pennsylvania because he knew it was the most important swing state. He spent 4 years out on the streets, at schools, and wherever he could, registering new Republican voters. And by the way, I think he's the guy who played a big hand in getting 180,000 Amish in the state of Pennsylvania to register to vote for the first time. Scott Pressler alone, I can't say single-handedly, he had a lot of help from so many people, so many patriots. But maybe, single-handedly in Pennsylvania, he helped turn the election for Trump here. Here's Scott Pressler speaking to those treacherous commissioners who are in the process of stealing another election. Yes, well, Scott is a patriot. And I think the work that he's doing shows that individuals who take it upon themselves to take responsibility can have a big impact. This is what we need to see more and more in the coming period. People have to stop relying on someone else to do the work for them and recognize that each of us, as individuals, has a role to play. Absolutely, Sean. You know, I look back to 2016, when Trump said he was going to take on the entire establishment. And you remember what he said when people told him it couldn't be done? He said, well, then I'm the one to do it. The fact that he was able to win was really a reflection of the breakdown of the credibility of the system. And I think we're seeing that all over again, but on a much bigger scale today. That's right. What's so inspiring is that Trump is never going to quit. He's never going to surrender. He said as much so many times, and we know he's not going to do that. This is why I think the left, the deep state, and the globalist cartel are so terrified of him. Because he's not in it for the money. He's in it because he's a fighter, and because he truly cares about this country. And if anybody listening to this broadcast still thinks that he's part of the same old political machine, you're not paying attention. The establishment would not be throwing the kitchen sink at him like they are if he were one of them. They hate him because he's not one of them. And I think people have to remember what happened when he went to the World Economic Forum and gave that speech, where he told them that America would no longer be bound by their globalist agenda. He said, "We reject the prophets of doom." And I think that statement alone put a target on his back. He openly defied them on the world stage, and they can't stand someone who has the courage to do that. And now, with people like Tulsi Gabbard, Matt Gaetz, and Scott Pressler out there fighting the good fight, there is real momentum. And that's what I think terrifies them the most, because they know they can't stop it. They can try to silence us, but they can't stop the movement, because it's bigger than any one person. And that's why I think it's so important for everyone listening to stay engaged, to stay focused, and to not give up. Because we are winning this battle. It might not feel like it at times, but the fact that they're so desperate and so panicked proves that we're on the right track. That's right, Harley. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do is to continue speaking the truth, sharing information, and waking up as many people as possible. Because the more people we wake up, the stronger our movement becomes, and the harder it is for them to silence us. And I think that the fact they're working so hard to discredit people like Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and Matt Gaetz is evidence that they see them as a real threat. That's why they're throwing everything they can at them. But the more they do that, the more people see through it and realize that these are the people who are actually fighting for us. Yes, that's why I think it's so important to have voices like yours, Harley, and the work that you're doing, because it helps people see the bigger picture and understand what's really going on. And I think the more we can do that, the better chance we have of turning things around. Well, thank you, Sean. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that you're doing too, because I think this is a team effort, and we all have a role to play in this fight. And I think if we stay united and we stay focused, there's nothing we can't accomplish together. Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to leave it for today. So thank you, Harley, for joining me. And thank you to everyone who's listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for supporting our work. We'll see you next time.